Hello, welcome to Sounding Fairy Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of The Quantum Entanglement by Aaron Benmark. This is a self-published book from 2023. It's a science fiction. I received this book as part of the SPSFC 5, where I'm a judge. It is currently a quarter-finalist. A quest novel that diverts into a rather epic tale of a fractured world, The Quantum Entanglement is a serious and contemplative post-apocalyptic story. So what is it about? America lies in ruins. Nearly 1,000 years following the cataclysm that destroyed the world, it has rebuilt itself into many smaller kingdoms, republics, and city-states, but the people live simple, desperate lives. Above all towers the powerful Church of Science, a religious organization that worships the old masters of science, bans technology for all but the wealthiest, and controls society with a velvet glove masking as an iron fist. Deep in the trenches of the church's hierarchy sits Court, a young researcher who wants to be left alone to his studies. To Court's surprise, however, he is about to be drafted into a dangerous mission that will take him to the highest levels of church society and the lowest. Court's mission will test his loyalties, convictions, and beliefs secretly held against the church's scriptures. He must navigate a brewing conflict between the church and the powerful scientific American emperor while not letting his true beliefs come to light, for even the slightest distance is punishable by disentanglement, worse than death. I'm not one for religion, you know this if you follow my channel, but the world building in this novel about a techno-controlling church state was really interesting, namely because of the contrasting societies Court runs into on his travels, but also because it seems like the church doesn't hate technology but holds it in such high regard that to use it for other than sanctioned purposes is blasphemy. The same goes for medicine. I thought this aspect was really interesting because usually when you get this kind of story, it's more like, oh, don't use that, we're afraid of it, it's not good. But in this case, it's almost seen as like something of reverence. So to give it to like everybody would be to like sully it somehow. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. I haven't really seen that before in other kind of approaches to this sort of an idea, because this sort of controlling society in various ways is not a rare trope. The characters are also very well done. While Court himself is sort of bland at times, he's a little like ho-hum, his motivations and more importantly his fears are well provided. He changes over the course of the novel, and not outwardly, but like in his opinions, which is hard to do without being didactic. He is matched with some great foils throughout the story. The main two would be Lind, this wealthy woman claiming to defend the working class, and Bart, an orphan boy who shows Court kind of the opposite ends of this kind of idea. There are others, of course, their main characters, including the culminating shock to Court's moral system later on, which obviously I can't get into for spoilers, but yeah, it's sort of... It's interesting. Court sort of travels around all of these different places and sees all these different kind of approaches to, I guess, control or governance, perhaps. It's interesting. Now, what's really interesting about this book is the timeline span. Going in, I thought it was going to be one of those like mad dash quest sort of things, you know, a few months on the road and then you come back. But this book spans years, and it's not kind to anyone. This is not a hopeful story by any means. In fact, I would argue it serves as kind of like a warning to society. What I thought was surprising was how there was no love story. It seemed like Court and Lind were expected, you know, plot-wise, to pair up, but it was super refreshing not to have this happen. Court is interesting in this regard, as while he has a one-night stand early in the book, he never seems to yearn for, more than that, and or any kind of relationship. He doesn't need to, of course. I just wondered kind of what that scene at the start was for, if then. And, you know, it actually might have made him a bit more interesting as a person if he had emotions about someone or something other than his city-state. It might have helped broaden him out a little bit. But then again, the book is already quite long, and this isn't a book about emotion in an individual sense. It's more focused on how the differing factors attempt to take over and dispose one another. I can't remember, as I read this like a couple weeks ago, but were they all schisms of the same religion? I can't remember. If so, the manner in which they broke apart is quite complex and interesting, and even just the different ways that they approached running society and kind of their different moral opinions about it is interesting in its own right too. So if you like serious dystopian fiction, this book is more for fans of 1984 than it would be for Fallout. It's really well done. I thought it was quite excellent. Now, of course, for the competition, I have some critiques. I could have used a bit more mid or lower level politics. We get the overarching structure of the societies against one another and kind of how their rulers see things, but how the church controls the regular population wasn't touched on as much. Like, it is a little bit, but I almost kind of wish I'd seen a bit more of that. The pacing was a little slow, especially around the 3/4 mark. As I said, it's quite the long book page-wise. The story sort of loses its momentum in bits and starts, so at some points I was super engaged, and at others I was kind of like, let's move on. It just needed a little bit of tightening, I think, here and there. And yeah, while Court's motives and actions in the book made sense, I found it hard to get to know him. He's complex, but more in like a philosophical sense than psychologically. He's like a giant schematic and not a puzzle. And in that way, I found the ideas that compelled his journey and compelled his actions fascinating, but I didn't really find him as a character all that compelling, if that makes any sense. Again, though, I don't think this book was aiming for a character study. I think this book was aiming more for a serious look at kind of what politics and the world would look like in a fractured city-state with competing ideologies. So I do think that yeah. I guess that's not really a critique in the sense. All right, I guess it is. I don't know. I guess maybe I just wish there was a little bit more to Court. Anyway, no, it's a really good book though, and if you're interested in serious sci-fi, you should totally check it out. Thanks.